I came across this tweet that said, "I'm crying because China Anne McClain was on a mission to make this song hers and succeeded." Now, for reference, the song we're talking about is Dynamite by China Anne, and if you don't know what it sounds like, it's playing in the background. Right. Now, just to make this comparison, a bit more solidified, the original version is at 200 million views. There's only a 100 million view difference from a Disney Channel cover, mind you. I know we fall on our factions between Nick, Disney, and Cartoon Network, but when it comes to producing hits, Disney was putting their actors and their artists on other shit. They Illuminati contract had to reach generations because there's no way every single fucking cast member was putting out hits. Look who Disney gave us. People died when Sneaker Night came. Basically, what we're gonna do is that people died. People died. People were in camps, okay? Ashley Tisdale gave us gold with He Said, She Said. I was walking up into a club at 14 with a martini and a Cosmopolitan ready to fucking shake something I ain't have. Breaking Free. I don't even need to explain why this is on the list. The Jonas Brothers was out here causing international conflict. Burning Up, Year 3000, SOS. I mean, the list fucking goes on. There were people going to war. Who was topping this? Who was topping La La Land by Disney Channel got shooters. Now, y'all like to do too much on my sister. Y'all like to call her names and say this and that. But let me remind you, Selena Gomez is one of the most streamed artists in Latin America. It's her and Shakira. She has over 100 million Instagram followers. Who y'all cannot snipe Disney's catalog. There will be no other era like that era of Disney Channel, whether it be shows or music catalog. Look at this. Do you see this? This vinyl, right? This right here. Now, I got it for $25. This vinyl is worth $250. $250. You don't believe me? Look it up. You can't even find it.
I need everyone saying, well, Ariel is black now, so why do you care now that Nani is white? To realize that is not the fucking gotcha moment that you think it is. Because one, Ariel is a mermaid, and they don't have a real world race or ethnicity or culture. That's a part of the fucking Little Mermaid. Two, you realize darker skinned people have been systemically underrepresented in media for longer than your entire life. The reason you should care when they cast lighter skinned actors with more Eurocentric features than the original is because it's so rare for that kind of character to even fucking exist in the first place. All you little Redditors have been fed this logic saying, well, why should it even matter what color they are? It should just be who's the most talented. Yes, that would be cool in perfect awesome world. That's what Hamilton is like. And I fucking hate Hamilton, but at least everyone in it is great. But most of the people in charge of making those decisions have not been playing by that perfect rule set this whole fucking time. So you should be more mad that the system has always been biased towards light-skinned people. Even more for women when you realize almost any time there's a role for a pretty girl, they'll pick the lighter person. So when you suddenly shift goalposts and say, yeah, but there are lighter-skinned Hawaiians too, don't they exist? Yes, they exist, and yes, they deserve representation too. But if we allow Hollywood that pass of saying, well, people come in all different shades and colors, so I guess I'll let it slide. We literally know, historically, that they will pick the lighter shades fucking a lot more often! Also, if you're gonna shift goalposts again and say, well, maybe she's just a more amazing, best talented actress than all the darker skinned ones, you need to realize that's fucking ridiculous. You're fucking talking insane now. Also, I don't see you complaining that King Triton is a Spanish guy now. That is not fucking Danish or Greek.
White people like black people. I think they like us as individuals. I guess.
And this is why the phrase, you're one of the good ones, is never going to be a compliment. This is because the person who said that is stripping you of your identity from the marginalized community that you belong to because you're the more palatable version. And I have, unironically, on multiple occasions throughout my lifetime, had people look at me and tell me that I'm one of the good ones. And I need us to think critically about that wording, because whether or not this person means to genuinely be offensive, or if that person means it as some sort of backhanded compliment, the idea, the thought process, the mental gymnastics is extremely dangerous. I have been told that I'm one of the good ones, referring to my blackness, to my queerness, to my neurodivergentness. And this is because I most likely am not fitting into a harmful stereotype that they have internalized about those communities. A lot of people still believe that Black people are inherently violent and cannot form a coherent sentence or make a poignant argument. And that is a provably false statement, but people still wholeheartedly believe that. And a lot of these people have Black friends. And a lot of us are confused how people will say something blatantly racist and then turn around and go, no, it's fine because I have a friend of color. This is because, one, their friend of color is a suck up and a loser. They're deeming their friend of color as an exception to whatever racist ideals they have about that community. So let's put it all together. Let's say there's somebody who genuinely believes that all Black people are violent and that they're uneducated. And they look at me and say that I am one of the good ones because I speak in a way that is palatable to them. I've shown that I am intelligent and I have never fought or shown violent behavior. The phrase one of the good ones in this context means that I am an exception and not that they are acknowledging that this community is not inherently violent and unintelligent. They're not looking at me and going, I must be wrong. I'm thinking all of these things, but you are showing me firsthand that these ideas are wrong. They're going, I'm still right. This community is still violent. They're still unintelligent. But this one person isn't. Everyone else is, but this person is. And I know that this is going to be a weird twist, but this is also why a lot of people of color did not like Darman. Because the video would be like, don't be racist. But you watch the video and the whole thing is, they're one of the good ones. One of his videos had this exact same stick of a parent who didn't want their child hanging out with a Black person because they thought that the Black child was stealing from them. And the only reason that she ended up accepting the Black child was because he was a palatable version of a Black person. He wasn't ghetto, he wasn't using AVE, he dressed and spoke in a way that was palatable. Never use that phrase. It will always be bad.
Gen Z tends to be very pro doing good deeds.
Okay, I had to stitch this video because as a Black disabled woman who is visibly disabled, this resonated with me so much. People use virtue signaling as a placeholder for common decency. And I know this because as a disabled person, people forget their decorum and decency when they relate with you. I think a lot of people can resonate with this idea that the person who bullied you in school is now like a mental health advocate, a social justice warrior, the expert on power structures and power dynamics. And you almost feel gaslighted because you're like, what? Is this the same person? And that's not because people don't change or can't improve themselves, but it's because people can get away with being nasty, foul people while spouting ideas that are correct. Disabled people, however, poke holes in this facade, in this veneer. Just look at how people have conducted themselves since the pandemic started. Look at the harassment and bullying that disabled people experience on and offline. I made a post on my IG the other day about how people relate with disabled people in public. And anytime I bring forward any of the issues that I experience, case in point, the wireless incident last year and others, people are always so quick to empathize with the harm doer. They can't empathize with the disabled person who's being dehumanized consistently when they experience social interactions. Rather, they empathize with the person who's enacting that harm. They can see why you should be treated like that because they themselves don't see you as an equal human being. People find it very difficult to acknowledge that they themselves can perpetuate systems of harm. The personal and the political always inform each other and it's constantly flowing back and forth. We can't avoid how these macro systems of harm shape our interpersonal micro experiences. And you'll never be able to do something that resonates and actually enacts change if you don't acknowledge that point. Anytime you refuse to acknowledge ableism and seek to justify and rationalize why it happened, there's no integrity behind anything that you claim to represent, and you are a worse person than the people who stand in their bigotry shamelessly.
How they're saying that streaming services are just becoming the new cable? Well, Warner Brothers is just further proving that point.
Here's what I hate about the tech era of capitalism. And when I say tech era, I mean everything post-iPhone, is that everything feels so monotonous, so unimaginative, and so inspired by money and not creativity that it shows, and we are quite literally all paying for it. Because here are my issues. I'm going to try to break them down as best as possible. Back in 2010, 2011, when streaming was just coming out, and it was really Hulu, there was Hulu, and you had everything you wanted from all of the Fox programs. I'm talking South Park, American Dad, Family Guy, Futurama. You had all of the good stuff there, all the good shit in one place. And for the most part, if I remember correctly, HD was included. We got little to no ads. And when you paid for the extra subscription, you got no ads. And then they changed it. Then Netflix had their streaming service. Everything was fine. Then they started randomly canceling programs. And we're like, okay, what the hell's going on? And then everybody started creating a streaming service to the point where now Crunch Fitness has a streaming service. For what reason? I don't know. I hate the subscription tier era that we're in. That sucks. But what really gets me is that why is nothing standardized? Because first of all, people are spending hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands of dollars, depending on how invested into home entertainment you are in. TVs cost two bands, the good ones at least. I have 4K included, HDR included, Dolby Atmos included. Why am I paying extra for a streaming service that is not even needed? Why am I paying extra for features that are already embedded in a system's hardware? I need to really understand that, because the content y'all are releasing, y'all are not doing anything extra with that money. Y'all are keeping that money just to stay afloat, because streaming isn't even profitable. No one asked for this. Like, we could have stayed at table. Bring back 22. I say it all the time, but bring back 22 episode TV, because y'all are killing these writers. They're going on strike soon. And what are we getting out of it besides a disgruntled industry that's about to fall apart? What are we getting out of it? Nothing. And now you're telling me to pay $20 and I can't share my password, even though I paid the bills up in this motherfucker. You telling me I can't use the shit that I paid for? What sense does that make? I will pirate this shit and watch this shit in 440p and 140p for free. Are y'all crazy?
I went on a date tonight. Now, this is the first date that I've been on since I ended my relationship. And I really hate to fool you, but I was with myself. I had been feeling a deep need for some intentional me time. So I decided to take myself to see a movie. I went and saw A Good Person. I highly recommend it. Bring your tissues, most definitely. I have puffy eyes because I've been sobbing. But instead of me just going to the movies and getting it over with, I treated it as if I was going on a first date with someone. I got ready. I put a comfy and cute outfit on that I felt good in. I put my jewelry on and my favorite perfume. I went and I got my favorite snacks to bring into the movie theater. And I was so giddy to go. I was so eager and excited. I was thinking about it all day. And I left feeling so fulfilled and so happy with myself, proud of myself for doing something that is other people's version of hell. And I enjoyed myself so much. And as I was driving home, Lizzie McAlpine came on and I started sobbing. And it wasn't necessarily tears of sadness or even tears of mourning. It felt weird to give all of my love to someone else. But it felt so right to give all of that love to someone who deserved it. And that's me. So if you're in the same boat as me and you just ended a relationship, wash your face, put on your favorite perfume, and take yourself on a date. It's not going to cure everything, but it's a step closer to healing that broken heart of yours.
Check out this video.
10 days ago, North Dakota senators voted against free school lunches for low-income families K through 12.
Instead of passing that bill, they decided to increase their own meal reimbursement from $35 to $45 per meal.
Yes, I can understand kids going hungry, but is that really the problem of the school district? Is that the problem of the state of North Dakota? It's really the problem of parents being negligent with their kids if their kids are choosing to eat in the first place.
This man looked you dead in the eye and told you that the reason why kids are hungry is because they choose to be hungry. It's not because they can't afford food.
And this hits really close to home. I was a kid that grew up on free and reduced lunches. Many times that was the only meal that I got that day. And to think,
I graduated from an elementary school where over 90% of the students were on free or reduced lunch assistance. I stayed there from pre-K to 8th grade and I never once had to pay for lunch. I finished in the top 5 of my class. When I tested into the honors program at Lincoln Park High School and enrolled, despite nothing about our household income or life circumstances changing, I was told I would have to pay full price for lunch. The lunch form was likely accidentally filled out incorrectly by my grandmother, but we didn't think anything could be done, so we just accepted it. No one was there to help us out. I went to school hungry a lot of days, couldn't focus. To save myself the embarrassment, I would go to the library, and if anyone asked, I would say that I was just going to study. When really I just couldn't afford to pay full price for lunch every day. I graduated from high school with a 2.1 weighted GPA, 1.8 unweighted. Not because I wasn't smart, but because it was difficult to focus on an empty stomach. And this, among other social factors, already stacked against me. I got into one college, an expensive private art school with an over 90% acceptance rate. I had no scholarships coming in due to the GPA, and loans couldn't fully cover the rest. But because I was more stable, I was able to do better academically. Year after year, I would have to apply to scholarships. And every year could have been the last one, especially with the tuition going up every year. Because of this, I stayed 5 years. But I finished. I finished there with a 3.33 GPA. After that, I went on to grad school at Chicago Theological Seminary, where I finished with distinction with a 3.73 GPA. People tend to use stories like this as proof that there's no excuse. If I got through that, you can too. I barely graduated from high school and I figured it out. But what I know is that this is not how the vast majority of these stories go, especially for black kids. What I know is that I slipped through the cracks of a systemic issue, one that negatively impacts the outcomes of hundreds of thousands of children every single year. Children who have to fight through hunger pangs while sitting through an algebra or a chemistry lesson. Children with talent and promise and potential, just like I was. Children who weren't getting a fair shot, just like I wasn't. Children are an ignored and oppressed class in this country, and the pushback against free school lunch is just another line in a long list of things that proves that. Feel free to share your thoughts and stories in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Senate Bill 4, universal meals with all the accountability measures and support of local producers and farmers is now the law of the land. Kids learn better when their stomachs are full and they aren't worried about their next meal.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, guys, but they gave us 365 days to split between all of us. But January, 365 is not divisible by 12.
You told us it would be equal.
Okay, yes,
what is
I
this
know,
crap?
but every fourth year, there is an extra day. Every fourth year?
Look, I didn't come up with this stuff, so some of you are going to have 31 and some of you are going to have 30, and you're just going to have to learn to live with it.
This is so unprofessional. Your attitude is unprofessional. Bruh, I'll take 30, I don't care. Let someone else do the extra work, you know what I'm saying? Thank you, June. I'll put you down for 30. Anyone else want to volunteer? I volunteer to take all 31 days to which I am entitled. Thank you. Okay, that's great. If he's getting 31, I want 31. Oh my gosh. I can take 30. I don't need 31. Thank you, February. April, what about you? Me? What about May? April showers bring May flowers. People prefer me more. Oh my gosh, you know what? Whatever. Fine. I don't care. I would volunteer, except that the ladies love me. They're all about that sweater weather. You know what I'm saying? So I can't disappoint my fans. Seriously? I'll give up a day. Heck, I'll give up all 31. What's the point anyway? He's a little depressed. He is the darkest month of the year after all. In the southern hemisphere, he's actually the sunniest, so a lot of these references we're making only make sense if you're north of the equator. Okay, that's it, September. I'm taking one from you because I don't think I can listen to your BS for one extra day. Wow. Rude. Dude. December, we'll just take one day from you, okay? No. I think December really needs all of his days, so I can just give up another one of mine. You only want 29 days? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. That's nice of you. November, you've been kind of quiet. You want to volunteer to give up a day? What about you, January? You're hiding there behind your little task. Maybe you could stand to lose a day. Okay, look, November, if you give up a day, I'll give up a day. January, you've been working so hard to coordinate this. I'll give up another one of my days so you don't have to. What about me? You're only going to take 28 days? Yeah, it's fine. Are you sure about this? Yeah. I'm sure. I feel a little guilty now. Yeah, you should, you piece of crap. Okay, well then it's settled. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31. Except for February, who has 28. It's fine. That's what I wanted. This is so sad. That's all well and good, but there is the remaining issue to be decided of which one of us gets the extra day every fourth year. And as I see it, there is only one of us here who is noble enough to deserve it. February. Me? I second the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. That nobody can deny.
The story of the lost colony of Roanoke is a perfect example of Americans not ever listening to Indigenous people. I'm a citizen of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, and if you're Lumbee, you know you know. It has long been a part of our culture, stories, tradition, history, that those people were never lost. They came to join us. They didn't disappear without a trace. There was a clear sign there left, the word Croatan. My ancestors are Croatan. Some of my ancestors are also Shira, and some of my ancestors are members of that lost colony. The history of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina in and of itself is a long and complex one, but the lost colony of Roanoke is definitely a part of it. A lot of us have European last names, myself included, and some of us have what would be considered European-esque features. Light eyes is a really common one. This is also a great example of how Indigenous identity is rooted in culture as opposed to racial purity, because those non-Indigenous people became Indigenous by joining us and joining our traditions, joining our ways, learning the way that we do things. You know, we didn't assimilate to them, they assimilated to us. And yes, there was some cultural exchange, like I mentioned, the surnames, and some of us did learn to speak English prior to, like, the rest of colonization, I guess. It's even stated in some reports that when other Europeans came to the area of Robeson County and found my people, my ancestors, my people told those settlers, we found people once before that could talk from a book, meaning they could read. But yeah, the Lumbee people have a good or bad habit of absorbing other people in need. You need resources, there's not enough of you to survive on your own. We're absorbing you. That's just how it works. That's how our history has always seemed to work. And I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of my people. So I hope you've all learned something. Just listen to Indigenous people. Don't wait for historians to verify that this is true. We've been telling you it's true, so just accept it.
You rang. This is going to be one of the few videos where I'm not making fun of anybody, because this is a question I actually get all the time. In fact, I got tagged in this video dozens of times. I'd love to give my perspective. Make no mistake though, if you're a terrible man, I will fuck up your day. Don't play with me. For context, as you may or may not know, I've been in a relationship with a man for going on 7 years. Still no ring though. Getting in front of those jokes now from the shithead dude. I don't have a ring because I don't want one right now, but you don't have a bitch because you can't get one. Anyways, moving on to what this beautiful woman asked, which is for the perspective and the non-negotiables of feminist women in relationships with men. I would consider myself a devout intersectional feminist, my man as well. No, I didn't have to convince him to be that. No, I didn't have to talk him into calling himself that. Factory settings, he came that way. As we've gotten older and gotten more educated and stuff, both of us have learned individually and as a couple how to be more inclusive and more cognizant, more empathetic. At his core though, he has never been someone who fucking hates women, and I've never had to convince him not to. So here are some non-negotiables from me. It does matter to me, political party. Who you voted for and what you believe in, your moral fiber, fucking matters to me. I don't fuck with that like, well, we just don't talk politics. I don't fuck with that shit, bitch. Tell me now, get it over with. I'm not wasting my fucking time. Because if our moral compasses don't point the same direction, we got nothing else to fucking talk about, bitch. Another non-negotiable for me is who he hangs out with and how they talk about women and how he reacts in situations like that. Far too often, I think women date men who have friends who are violently misogynistic or bigoted, and that boyfriend either laughs along with them or doesn't say anything at all. So either that's how you really feel and you just don't want women to know because you want to fuck them, or you're a fucking coward. Either way, get the fuck out my face. Another non-negotiable is when I myself am talking about the violence and oppression of women, the effects that patriarchy has, and I say things like, this is why men fucking ruin everything. How my boyfriend reacts to that statement is also a non-negotiable. Because my boyfriend right now, when I talk shit on men who are fucking horrible, his reaction is this. I know, I get it. It's really fucking awful, I agree with you. Because he knows I'm not talking about him. Because if I was, we wouldn't be fucking dating, would we? Another non-negotiable is how my boyfriend reacts to me and my emotions. One of the stereotypes of misogyny against women is how volatile and overreactive they are with their emotions. And men don't have emotions like that. If you're a man who doesn't give a fuck how you make your girlfriend feel because you're a man, that's not a manly thing. You're just a fucking piece of shit. Emotional intelligence and cognizance is a non-negotiable. Them being willing to work on it and validating your feelings fucking matters. This is also great because I'll be writing a lot about this in my book coming out next year. Anyways, love you, bye.
I woke up at 4:45 a.m. to have my pre-dawn meal. Then right after, I pray my Fajr. Then I jump straight to work and listen to the Quran while working.
I really think on the Day of Judgment, some queer Muslims will be held in such high esteem by Allah, inshallah. And my reasoning for that is this. The man in this video that I stitched is having such a pious day. He's fasting, praying on time, helping with his children, and he just so happens to have a husband. And go read the comments that people are leaving. They are being so incredibly vile and disgusting towards this fellow Muslim during the month of Ramadan. Just makes me think about how we hold the Sahaba in such high esteem, as we should. A lot of the reason for that is because of the persecution that they faced from the tribes of the Quraysh and the other people of the time, and they were still able to hold on to their faith despite all of that. I'm not comparing this man to the Sahaba, but I am making a point that imagine being so vilified and ostracized by your own community and still having to hold on to your faith. You know, there's like almost this double standard that there's no way that gay Muslims can win. If they try and stay in the faith and still practice, they're consistently told that they don't belong in the religion. And if they become overwhelmed and leave the religion, then we point at them and say that they were always hypocrites to begin with. Some of you don't even pray, don't even fast. You have fathers that don't even look after their children, that don't even treat their wives the way that they should. And here you have a pious religious man taking care of his spouse and children, and somehow he's the problem.
Black farmers from 15 states rallied in front of the White House demanding that President Biden fire Secretary of Agriculture Thomas Vilsack.
We want black farmers to get the same resources and the same programs that they give white farmers.
Black farmers fought for federal legislation to cancel the debt of black farmers as part of a historical fight for justice. It passed, but a group of white farmers sued, calling it a form of reverse discrimination.
We were able to secure various pieces of federal legislation to provide debt cancellation to black farmers. And white domination has challenged the implementation at every turn.
For almost a century, black farmers have been struggling against the racist practices of the USDA while calling for land and reparations. After the Civil War and end of slavery, Union General Sherman ordered the redistribution of 400,000 acres of slaveholders' land in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, but the promise of 40 acres and a mule that spread throughout the freed people was never fulfilled. In 1920, there was almost 1 million black farmers in the United States, representing 14% of all farmers. Today, only 1.3% are black, who own a mere 0.52% of America's farmland. A big part of the systematic dispossession of black farmers was from the USDA itself. In 1965, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights found rampant discrimination against black farmers in providing loans and conservation payments. But even civil rights legislation didn't fix the problem. President Reagan dismantled the Office of Civil Rights and made it easier for the USDA loan programs to discriminate. And black farmers still can't catch a break today.
We got county committee people right now that are trying to foreclose on black farmers' grain tanks so they can take them for themselves.
Protesters say that Secretary Vilsack has administered the $3 billion for economically distressed farmers to disproportionately benefit white farmers. The administration says it is committed to addressing centuries of racism towards black farmers, but where are the checks?
Let's talk about this video.
I don't know who told us you got to be a witch to be black. You are not more black by engaging in witchcraft that is still propagating a white supremacist lie that black people in Africa didn't know Jesus.
As a formerly trained seminarian whose research centers the study of Black faith and life, I can tell you that the white supremacist lie is the idea that because Christianity simply existed somewhere in Africa, that means Christianity was widespread. In West and Central Africa, where the majority of enslaved Africans were taken from, there is very slim evidence of Christianity being practiced there before colonialism, and even less evidence of it being widespread. Before Christian colonialism, Western and Central Africa had many traditional religions that worshiped multiple deities and spirits. They saw divinity in nature. These religions were often polytheistic and animistic. Many cultures practiced syncretism, where they held multiple spiritual beliefs at the same time. Christian supremacy, the belief that Christianity is the one and only true religion, that it is the only path and way to experience true spirituality. These ideas were the direct result of white supremacist colonialism, a system so effective that it still has a Black woman in 2023 demonizing African spiritual practices, still calling Black women witches and calling non-Christian spiritual practice detestable and impure.
I am angry that the powers that be in social media and in culture and in music and in Beyonce's music and in Kalani's music and in whatever the other, and in Santor, like I'm angry that they are really trying to convince us that all spiritualism is the same. And we have digested this impurity and this, we want so bad not to be legalistic that we actually become profane. We are not going to imitate the detestable practices of the nations.
You don't truly understand the nuances of white supremacy if you don't understand how it informs your spirituality. If you don't see the direct white supremacist connections in using language like impure and detestable when describing expressions of Black spiritual practice that don't line up with white evangelical Christianity. This is a page right out of the colonizer's playbook. So yes, all spiritualism isn't the same. But let's place that in context and understand the role that white supremacy plays in determining what spiritual practices are godly and which ones are demonic. People also consistently bring up the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as evidence of Christianity in pre-colonial Africa. But Ethiopia is in East Africa and was not involved in the Middle Passage. Furthermore, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church practiced Christianity in a very different way than Western Christianity does today. Case in point, the veneration of ancestors was an important part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. But this is something that the Western Church and likely Jackie Hill Perry would call demonic. And speaking of demons,
We want so bad to have all these freedoms that we are entertaining demons, and you wonder why you are depressed. And you wonder why you are anxious, and you wonder why you have nightmares, and you wonder why you can't sleep, and you wonder why you see things in your room at night. It's because you're opening up doors to all kinds of demons. Close them.
how many people, how many Black people, how many Black women have been told that their very real challenges like insomnia, anxiety, and depression were the result of demons? I think we've lost count. This is spiritual bypassing. It is the use of spiritual ideas, practices, and beliefs as a way to sidestep or bypass the uncomfortable or challenging aspects of life, rather than confronting them directly. That if people don't actually have the gift of clairvoyance, that they may be impacted by their very real religious trauma that taught them to be hypervigilant and feel like something is lurking in every dark shadow, making them anxious or making it difficult for them to go to sleep. That the fear of eternal separation from God from things like passing thoughts or natural human desires can cause depression.
Whatever you got in your home that's witchcraft, throw it away. Throw it away. Burn everything you got. Because we are women who are going to love God with all of our heart and all of our mind and all of our soul.
The church continues to use fear-mongering, spiritual manipulation, and spiritual bypassing, anti-intellectualism, and anti-Black spiritual beliefs as a way to sway people. People are tired, and they deserve understandings of spirituality and spiritual practice that brings them peace, clarity, and alignment. Ones that don't have roots in white supremacy and colonialism. Feel free to leave your thoughts and stories in the comments, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Unions were also allowed to discriminate on the basis of race, and they did. Many unions remain.
What she's about to say is that many unions were for white people or just only allowed white membership until very recently. And understanding that legacy is really important for understanding and contextualizing current leftist movements in the country right now. Because many leftists like to say that Black and brown people from different marginalized identities should stop or not focus as much on the social indifference and social identity dynamics because we need class solidarity. These unions that only allowed white membership were essentially saying the same thing. They were saying we risk losing our struggles if we include your interests, and therefore your interests cannot be a part of our struggle. I'm not even saying this as someone who has necessarily had to deal with this a ton. And Black people know that the result of this is our issues never getting addressed. If you haven't yet, I recommend reading some of Claudia Jones's work. Claudia Jones wrote extensively about her experiences of organizing black workers in the early 20th century, specifically black women working in domestic labor. She even speaks to being excluded from other unions that were forming around this, and having to go start her own shit. The fact that I know so many black people organizing in labor that have had to do similar things today is astounding. This is why I talk about unity versus solidarity. This is what I mean by solidarity over unity. People want black and brown and other marginalized folks to just assimilate into what they have going on rather than adopting the whole approach around everyone's needs. Good luck building your rainbow coalition when no one feels safe around you. Y'all don't believe that liberating people who are more marginalized than you is actually going to free you, and that's the issue. And yet, when marginalized people have gained and built power in this country, it has only helped other people. I'm just saying, there's an opportunity to learn from history here. Folks would rather water shit down than educate people about more radical stances. And you have more patience for bigots than the people who are on the left of you with more radical analysis. I don't understand it. Look, I'm not telling y'all how to do y'all thing. Y'all go ahead. But what I am saying is that based on these legacies, don't act surprised when people don't rock with y'all. Because who the hell wants to organize and risk their life with someone who they don't trust? It just doesn't make sense.
When we allow mass shootings to happen at our schools, and we are allowing it, it gives us permission to lock down our schools, add armed security to those schools, put perimeters around those schools, start treating those schools like they're already a prison. Then, when kids misbehave, when kids don't have bright hope for their future, they're already preconditioned to be in these incredibly stressful lockdown situations and have to perform academically and socially in prison-like conditions, which when we arrest them on minor misdemeanors and charge them overdue sentences, they become very compliant prisoners. And this is exactly what we're trying to do in our country, and it's a problem.
So, let's talk about the school to prison pipeline.
The school to prison pipeline. It's a term that describes how American kids get pushed out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Basically, harsh zero-tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests. Getting suspended or expelled means more time away from school, and it doesn't take an honor student to figure out that's bad news. In fact, expelled and suspended students are more likely to get held back a grade, end up in juvie, or just drop out altogether. And dropping out of high school makes you 3 times more likely to get arrested. Back in school, forget about hallway monitors. Students these days often have to deal with school police. Minor offenses that might have landed you in the principal's office back in the day can now actually lead to your arrest. Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates, while a student with a disability is 2 times more likely to get an out-of-school suspension than everyone else. And it's not because these kids are just bad apples. The Justice Department found that black students got harsher punishments than their white peers for doing the same things. So maybe it's time our education system got schooled?
Beyonce's married to him. Jay-Z. Tick-tock in the future. Yep. He's right behind you. Oh, well, I am. Yep. That's my best friend. She a really? The other girl. Doja Cat. Yes. Zoe Kravitz is his daughter. Oh, Lenny Kravitz. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Usher. They're not the Backstreet Boys, they're NSYNC, yeah. Let's see this side of on this done. Mary J. Blige, that's right, okay, white rappers, 50 Cent, Mom Spaghetti. So look at them. Yeah. Rihanna is her baby daddy. A$AP Rocky. Yeah. Who's my girl? Luxurious. Fergie. No, Gwen Stefani. Yeah, girl. If you ain't acting grown, you acting what? Childish. Gambino.
Since so many people believe that cognitive testing is the way to go to weed out people who should not vote, the bigots, the old, the disabled, then why don't you take a test with me? But before we begin our exam, I have a preliminary question. In what reading level should a cognitive test for voting be written in? Now, let us begin. First question. How many branches of government are there? Who was elected president in 2020? In what year did federal protections give all women the right to vote? How old is the Earth? Lastly, how many genders are there? And keep in mind, this test determines your ability to vote. For my preliminary question asking about the reading level of a voting test, if you answered anything above a 6th grade reading level, you've just disenfranchised 54% of the country. The answer to the first question is fairly simple. There are 3 branches of government. President Biden was elected as president in 2020. However, the answer to that question can rely on your political affiliation. Number 3, what year gave federal protections for all women to vote? That year was 1965, with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. For number 4, answers can vary widely. The Earth scientifically is 4.5 billion years old, around about. But if you're a fundamentalist Christian, it's about 6,000 years old. And the last question, how many genders are there, relies entirely upon your own biases. Every single time somebody talks about taking a test to vote, it takes for granted several things. It takes for granted, first of all, that we've already done this, specifically to disenfranchise Black voters. Another thing that it consistently ignores is the idea that we don't live in a perfect world. We just assume that the people creating the test, designing the test, share our same basis in reality. And this is why ableism always ricochets. Is thinking you were going to weed out undesirable voters, you've disenfranchised yourself.
Day and night, drinking coffee from a pot. Nothing you want to know.
I finally realized it. I finally figured out why the scene from Hidden Figures, the coffee pot scene from Hidden Figures being joked about on TikTok just rubs me the wrong way and makes me uncomfortable, because look at how she acts out that scene versus how she acts out all the other scenes. I'm not going to sit over here and explain the plot of Hidden Figures. If you haven't watched Hidden Figures, go watch it. It is literally based off of a true story. But the scene that this app has just decided to make a joke out of is Katherine Johnson, an African-American female mathematician at NASA, being reprimanded by her boss for taking too long to go to the bathroom. The reason why she takes so long to go to the bathroom is because NASA is segregated and did not have any colored restrooms in the area that she worked in. So she had to go 20 minutes there and 20 minutes back in order to go to the bathroom. They did not allow her to use any of the bikes that were provided to lessen the duration of her trip to the bathroom because she is Black and because NASA is segregated. As a Black woman in NASA, she is expected to wear the same uniform that the other women in NASA wear, and that includes a string of pearls around her neck. But because she is a Black woman, they do not pay her enough to afford the pearls that they expect her to wear with her uniform. The reason why she was so hurt and in pain in that little snippet of the scene is because even though she was permitted to work with the white men, they put in a new coffee pot, a shittier coffee pot, just for her. They segregated the coffee pots. Something as simple as a coffee pot they did not want to use or touch simply because she was Black. I don't know, it just feels like y'all are so detached from reality that y'all can look at a scene that is based off of a real thing that happened, that is based off of segregation that actually exists, a scene that is supposed to make you mad and make you upset, and y'all like laugh at it, and it's just like, huh, look at her, look, she's so mad, she's so expressive, and she's so mad. See, angry Black woman, haha, so funny. I might be the only Black person who feels this way, but I just don't think that that scene from Hidden Figures is funny. I don't think that Black trauma / perseverance films that are based off of and represent real things that happened in the real world and how Black people were actually treated as funny, and I don't think that it's something to like kiki about.
Here's how to respectfully write a Romani character. And I'll give you a hint, it's not like this. This is one of my most frequently asked questions from writers who want to avoid stereotyping Romani people like these characters do. So here are a few basic tips to be as respectful as possible in creating the character. And just a disclaimer, I obviously do not speak for all Romani people when saying this. Number 1, what are your motives in writing this character? Is it because you've always been fascinated by the exotic and mysterious Romani culture? Or you're sad to see that Romani people are constantly misrepresented, and you want to be the savior that is credited with giving us accurate representation? Both of those reasons probably tell you that you shouldn't be making a Romani character. So be extremely honest with yourself on your motives. Number 2, to avoid being stereotypical, try taking inspiration from the stories of real Romani icons. By taking inspiration, I don't mean copying or disrespecting their stories. I mean doing your research on their experiences as Roma and how that shaped their identities. Number 3, don't homogenize us. Romani people are extremely diverse with hundreds of different groups and dialects. Pick one and make sure your research is authentic to that specific group. Don't describe them as a racial caricature. They have many different phenotypes and ways of dressing. The free-spirited, colorful dress, dangling gold coins descriptors are getting kind of tired. Romani characters can just be Romani. They don't have to make it their entire personality. We are normal people just like everyone else. Write them as you would any other race. Their personality doesn't need to be dictated by being Romani. Number 5, if the Romani people in your writing are magical, everybody else in that world better be magical. Please do not paint them as being magical because they're Romani. Only have Romani characters be supernatural. And with that, avoid the gypsy witch trope, avoid the stealing children trope, avoid the gypsy curse trope. And even though Romani women have historically used fortune telling as a means of survival, let's leave that for Romani authors to explore, because I've never seen it not done stereotypically. Of course, please do not make your Romani characters criminals or swindlers, and please do not call them racial slurs like gypsy. And again, these are just some basic recommendations, not a complete list. For all my fellow Roma, feel free to include your own opinions in the comment section below.
So y'all remember this? So y'all remember that, the Pyrex gate with me and Amber when I took her Pyrex. I'm going to give y'all some insight on how these brands treat black creators. Because this isn't funny anymore, and I'm tired and I'm pissed off. So obviously, me and Amber across all platforms accumulated probably 14 to 15 million views. That's a lot of free promo. That's free as fuck. You feel me? So obviously when the Pyrex thing was going off and it was popping, our teams were reaching out to Pyrex to create some kind of deal to get something shaken. They were lollygagging, bullshitting, and then a couple weeks ago, they finally said, all right, we'll do a deal. The deal itself, fucking laughable. Laughable. Disrespectful, if you will. Because it was $5,000 for me and Amber each to make a video. $5,000 each, way below our usual rate. So we were like, you know what, fuck it, we'll do it. It's fine. Then today, I get an email saying that they said, actually, no, we just don't want to do it anymore. After they already gave us an offer, they rescinded it. And I'm pissed because this is how black creators get treated on social media. Working with brands. We get paid less, and then we have brands that rescind fucking offers. Me and Amber are full-time content creators. This is how we make our money. I don't like when people fuck with my money. And I don't like Pyrex for doing this. It's mad disrespectful and it's unfair because we all know if it was any other type of creator, this shit would never fucking happen. And I'm tired of brands getting away with treating us like this. Amber's not gonna say anything because she's too nice. I'm not nice at all, especially when you're fucking with my money. After all we've done, I'm not going, bro. I'm sorry. Fuck y'all. Period. If you got a Pyrex because of me and Amber and our videos and you thought it was funny, take that shit back to the store. We do not rock with Pyrex.
I want to share a story from 2 days ago that highlights white men's audacity, men overall's boldness, and a different perspective on sex trafficking. So a couple of days ago, as I'm leaving work and near our office, there's a spa there. And as I'm leaving, I see a man like circling the parking lot looking for something. And by the time I got to my car, he got out of his car and was walking up to me. And as he's walking up to me, he asked me, hey, do you know where I can find a massage place? I'm like, oh, I think you're looking for the spa. It's like 2 doors down that way, right? And he goes, before he leaves, he goes, do you know if it's like one of those like happy ending massages? And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, oh, I'm not from around here. I wanted to ask the locals, you know, if I can find where I can find a spot to get happy ending massages. And I'm like, I wouldn't know. And like, as he's about to walk away, I'm like, you know what? Like, let me tell you something. So I call him back. I'm like, hey, you know those places that give happy ending massages are not legal, right? Like, they shouldn't be doing that. He's like, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah. So anyways, fast forward to the next day, and the next morning, when I pull up to the office, one of the staff that works at the spa, he's like, she's next to me, and I flag her down. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but people think your spa is offering happy ending massages. She's like, oh no, we don't offer that. And I told her about the guy from yesterday, and she goes, you know what's funny? A couple of days ago, a guy called us and asked us about our ethnicities of our masseuses, and I'm like, oh, that's probably not a coincidence. She's like, yeah, probably not, right? But the things that they highlighted for me, right? Why do you think the one black guy in the parking lot is a black guy that would know where to find the illegal activities, right? As a white man. 2, where's the shame, right? Where's the embarrassment to ask a random stranger where you can go find happy ending massages, right? And 3, people often think that sex trafficking is happening everywhere but the U.S., but it's happening in the U.S. as well. And I live in South Florida, and it's happening here a lot. But that whole shit was crazy to me. It's fucking crazy.
It never ceases to amaze me how quickly the whole protect black women thing goes out the door when a black woman on TikTok says something that people don't agree with. 48 hours ago, I stitched a creator who was reviewing some food. It was some Caribbean food. And he described the food as looking like a diaper with baby shit in it. I, like a lot of African and Caribbean people growing up in the United States, I was triggered by that. Because growing up, that's something that they always would say, like, your food stinks, it looks like poop. So I was just taken aback to see a grown man with such a large platform say something so ignorant. So I stitched him and I told him that his take was disappointing. Since then, I've been getting berated on this app and on my Instagram by mainly black men telling me that I should die, and things should be taken from me against my will. I can't say the word because TikTok will take this down. They also reported my stitch so much that it got removed. So if anybody was confused about where my stitch went, I didn't delete it. They got it removed. It's really frustrating being silenced on this app. Like, the things that TikTok decides to censor versus not is just amazing to me. You know, I didn't disrespect this guy. I didn't call him out of his name. I didn't disparage him. He didn't have to agree with me. He didn't have to receive what I said well or happily. But to know that your follower base has been attacking me on my little platform compared to yours for simply calling you out for something that you should have been called out for, it's amazing to me. Somebody commented under one of my videos and they were like, oh, you should go ahead and turn off all your comments and delete your TikTok. Baby, let's be clear about something. That video I stitched of his got about 10,000 plays before they got it removed. Scroll through my TikTok. Take a minute and scroll through my TikTok. That video, that stitch, is nothing compared to some of the other videos that I've created that have been stitched and responded to. My point being that the criticism isn't going to make or break my platform. But I do want to highlight what y'all do to black women creators on this app. Y'all chase lip gloss off of this app, and you're not going to do the same thing to me. You're just not. Because the moment that we say something about somebody that you like or something that you don't agree with, actually, it has nothing to do with disagreeing with what was said. Y'all didn't actually listen to what I said in the stitch. All they cared about is that I disagreed or critiqued their favorite person on this app. So by their logic, it's okay to call me a black monkey and wish death on me and my family. All for me standing up for my culture and other people's cultures. That's fair.
Clarence Thomas is a black nationalist.
By any means necessary.
Let me explain. According to Stanford University, black nationalism can be boiled down to 3 basic tenets: black economic self-sufficiency, black pride, and black separatism. And Corey Robin argues in his book, The Enigma of Clarence Thomas, that Thomas hits all 3 of them. Kind of. Buckle up. We're about to go deep. To really understand him, you need to listen to this one speech he gave to a room full of black lawyers in 1998.
How does one introduce a person who is so well known that virtually everyone in this audience has an impression of him?
The room is tense. A lot of black folks don't feel like he should even be there.
I have come to say, isn't it time to realize that being angry with me solves no problems?
But Clarence Thomas sees this as an opportunity to outline his philosophies on race. He talks about his time as a leftist black radical in the 1960s.
As I have suggested, I have been there. The frustrations with the so-called system, the subtle and not so subtle bigotry and animus toward members of my race made radicals and nationalists of many of us, nationalists of many of us, nationalists of many of us.
That the cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary.
He muses about black dignity.
Any effort, policy, or program that has as a prerequisite the acceptance of the notion that blacks are inferior is a non-starter with me.
To be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being.
I do not believe that kneeling is a position of strength.
I must be respected. I must be protected. I am somebody.
Nor do I believe that begging is an effective tactic.
By any means necessary.
And just a few years before this speech, he wrote a judicial opinion that all but argued for black separatism. The foundation for a kind of black power nationalism is there. The problem is where Clarence Thomas lands, his conclusions. Black nationalist heroes like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and Kwame Ture, they saw black solidarity as an important part of their agenda, their ideas for the black community. But Clarence Thomas isn't interested in the collective, the group. He's only interested in the individual.
I am confident that the individual approach, not the group approach, is a better, more acceptable, more supportable, and less dangerous one.
And that's the glaring hole in his ideology. He wants to live in a world where black people are fully self-sufficient and can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, without acknowledging all of the systems working to keep black people bootless as a group in the first place. There's still a lot to unpack here. I made a full deep dive on my YouTube channel. Check it out and consider subscribing over there.
This Namibian actor stars in a new movie about the German genocide her family survived.
Nobody saved us. We saved ourselves.
Girlie Charlene Yadama, a Herero descendant, stars in De Vermessene Mensch, or Measures of Men.
Ihr nehmt unser Land weg.
The movie depicts the massacres of Herero and Nama people during Germany's colonial rule in Namibia. The largely undercovered atrocity is considered the first genocide of the 20th century.
It's a difficult story, but unfortunately, we as storytellers and as people can't continue to ignore it. It's been 120 years since these atrocities were committed.
Before filming, Girlie investigated her family's connection to the massacres. She discovered that her great-great-grandmother was imprisoned in the concentration camp where she got pregnant.
I'm a byproduct of rape. I am basically being used as a catalyst to give a voice to my ancestors.
Historians estimate that Germans killed up to 100,000 Herero and Nama people through forced labor, warfare, starvation, and sexual violence. Colonizers also shipped skulls to Germany to study the physical features of Africans and substantiate racist theories later used to justify the Holocaust. Germany has repatriated some of these remains, but many still reside in German museums and institutions today.
Ancestors are very important, and they're not at peace. So if they're not at peace, we're not at peace, because we've not been able to heal. If you're not able to heal, the oppressed then become the oppressors.
The movie was received warmly in Namibia, but many Afro-Germans accused the film of whitewashing the massacre. Girlie, who consulted on the movie, argues that director Lars Kraume couldn't have told the story otherwise.
He can't tell our story for us, because the story is currently told from the German ethnologist's perspective, because I said, that's our responsibility as Namibian filmmakers, to tell the story from the perspective of the Herero and the Nama, not yours.
She also pushes back against critics who say the movie didn't cover every aspect of the genocide.
It's the first of many films to come. This is only the first one, and we have a lot more stories to tell.
People are applying for roles that they are actually overqualified for.
Companies are losing their shit. Let's talk about what you can do about it. The video that I just stitched talked about how people are applying for jobs that they're overqualified for. And because of that, it's having a ripple effect through the entire job chain, making it harder for anyone to be paid for their actual level of experience and skill set. This is a huge problem, because this means millions of people have lifestyles that are no longer going to be able to be upheld because they're not able to find employment after being laid off in a way that's able to suit their needs. In my videos, I talk about how important it is for one job to not be your entire life, for you to have multiple streams of income, and for you to have income streams that you actually enjoy that light you up, even if that's beyond what you do in your scope of work for your 9-to-5 job. I also talk about how important it is for you to have a robust network all the time, because this is what saves people during situations and employment crises like what we're seeing now. And if you're like Chelsea, I have no clue where to start. Let's get into it. First, I don't really care if you have a business, if you have a job, or if you're currently unemployed. Get another revenue stream. This should be something that is easy for you to manage. If you want an activity, things like dog walking, house sitting are great options. If you're an artist or a musician looking into digital ways to share your work with others. If you would like to produce a product or service, think digital content. Any passive revenue streams, now is the time to build them up. If you're starting from scratch, check out my 4-week pivot program. The next thing you need to do is really expand your network. Create connections that are aligned with your values. These will be the people that will help you find opportunities and help you get your foot in the door. The final thing that's the most important is understand your personal brand. Because when anyone is looking to hire you, they are going to be thinking in their head, how is this person going to either help me make money or actually help me further this mission? You have to understand how to sell yourself if you're interested in working for someone else. Again, my 4-week pivot program helps clients do this, whether it's for entrepreneurship or a job search. It's the quickest way to get to where you would like to go. I hope this helps.
Check out this video. It says harsh truth. Our ancestors didn't need therapists. We've just gotten softer. Follow to become a better man. Here's this perspective from Kendrick Lamar, who at one point had a very similar thought process. During an interview in Ghana, Kendrick talked about his favorite lines from the album Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
One of my favorite lines in the album is where Wood say, you really need to go to therapy. And I say, real niggas don't go to therapy. Because that's how niggas feel, you know what I'm saying? We grew up where our parents don't know about that, our grandparents don't know about that. You live and you experience the shit that you go through and you deal with it right then and there, or you don't never deal with it. To challenge myself to go to therapy. Shit, that's like a whole new step in a whole new generation. It's a growth.
This line was in the song Father Time. And he also talks about therapy on his song United in Grief.
I went and got me a therapist. I can debate on my theories and sharing it well. Consolidate all my comparisons, humbling up because time was imperative. Whoa.
I was raised by a village of Jamaican immigrants and by the Black church. And those communities culturally don't tend to endorse therapy. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was at a point where I felt ready to do my work. And so I began looking. I had my first conversation with my therapist while leading a mission trip in Chicago, having no clue she would be helping me heal from my religious trauma. The person that I am today and the work that I do on these platforms is a direct result of work that I've done in therapy over the past 4 years. Work that has helped me to come back home to myself and to find alignment. I went to accelerate my healing journey, and it's been transformative. Therapy has helped me to release so much of the trauma that formed me. It has helped me to lean into myself. It has provided me with tools I needed to live a more thoughtful and intentional life, and to hold space for how what I went through informed my approach to the world, and to release the power these experiences had over my life. Therapy was where I learned that the anger was really grief, and that my resistance to change was rooted in fear. Me going to therapy was, in part, an act of resistance against all the things society taught me about being a man. And that resistance made me a better man. So in whatever way you can, if you can, I think you should try therapy. In a word from the homie Professor Odie.
When you are socialized to believe that you are not an emotional being, and then you turn around and you learn how to utilize your emotions, the first couple months of that shit is gonna feel very overwhelming. So a number of men will say, I went to therapy, it only made me more anxious or it only made me more angry. Yes, because we are breaking that hard shell that exists on the outside in order to get to the true emotions on the inside. If you are not used to processing emotions, then emotional processing is going to feel like an overwhelming task. Not only that, most men are not equipped to emotionally process. Well, at least not to the levels that happen in therapy. So when you go to therapy, it's almost like going to the gym. Them first couple weeks gonna burn like hell. But once you understand the techniques and how to lift your emotions, then it gets better. You can't cop out after the first couple sessions because it got hard. Keep going.
Thank you for watching, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Hi everyone! So, I am thinking of taking Racist Rehab on its very first outing. Oh, Trump rally? Gretchen, Trump was arrested. Not that we would go if he wasn't, of course.
He's in cardiac arrest? Oh, Jesus on the cross.
Enough about Trump. Enough about Trump. No, I'm thinking of taking everyone to see, drumroll, The Little Mermaid! I thought this was Racist Rehab, and now you want to expose us to racism? That doesn't make any sense. Look, I know we're used to our kind being Barbies, mermaids, gargoyles, other mythical beings, but times have changed, and it's important to embrace. Okay, but imagine they did this to Tiana. Yeah. They're currently doing it right now to Lilo and Stitch, and guess what they're doing? Complaining. I just don't see how this is any different. Well, Sarah, that's because it's about indigenous Hawaiian people in Hawaii. And that's reality, Sarah. It's something real. Well, my middle name is Ariel, and I'm white. Am I not real? Do I not matter? Did you just make that up, Sarah? Maybe. WWW, white woman warfare. It's my specialty. Did I lie? Did I tell the truth? Am I hysterical? Will I start crying? Who knows? And that's the most important thing. Never let your opponent guess what you're gonna do next.
Holy. What the?
Now, a little white lie never hurt anybody. Negro lies. Those are the ones you need to worry about.
True. She says what I'm thinking.
Okay. So you're a mermaid. Wow. Yeah, I might be. I had no idea. Little Mermaid based on you. So tell me, when were you born? Oh, 1989. You know, the year the movie came out, obviously. So, okay, wow. So you were a baby and Ariel was supposed to be 16. Interesting. White woman warfare. Of course. You know, I may be reformed, but I'm still a white woman. That part of you just doesn't go away. Sarah has no idea who she's messing with. You can't outdo the doer. Bring it on. Well, it's a film dedicated to future me. Oh, like a manifestation. That's so cute. It's just also funny because you said you have 2% West African DNA. So a black Ariel shouldn't bother you, right? If we're all one human race.
Oh my god, poor Sarah. Wait, so is she mixed?
Checkmate. Excuse me, I was not told there was a colored in here.
Like, really?
Are you attacking me right now? Because I'm overly attacked and I don't know why you don't believe me. What? I cannot even believe that you would accuse me of that, Sarah. No. I'm simply just repeating information you told us. You know, because I'm a great listener.
What is going on? What is going on? I can't.
Oh, that was riveting. Did I kind of blow the session? Yeah, but it was necessary. I typically don't like tapping into that, but sometimes you gotta speak their language. I hadn't seen good old white woman warfare like that since the 60s. It was lovely. Until I learned we had been compromised. You mean to tell me this country is doing blackface wrong, and now Sarah's doing whiteface? I told them they took integration too far. Do you believe me? You don't believe me? Okay. I am done. Fuck this. What happened to believe all women? You know? I'm done. My mic fell.
Racist rehab. I don't know about y'all, but listening to hip hop feels like an abusive relationship. One moment, the tempo teases my body to play. Then the next, I'm being dragged and dissected under the lyric. Don't know whether to shake my ass or my head, just that there's a conflict the bass leaves me too distracted to name. A soft thing trampled beneath the treble, crushed in the crowd of hype, a wounding after every punchline. For some of us, the music hits different. We leave the parties bleeding but don't know it as blood have been the sacrifice over and over. The altar for every generation of boys who believe our bodies' currency, their tongues, swords, lyrics that slice. We say they murdered the beat. They take shots and we twerk, dance like Megan did from bullets, then convince us maybe our homegirls did it. A wicked, distorted image of us holding the gun to ourselves. The history of hip-hop in America is a sample of the sound of a black woman sobbing her plight, chopped and screwed for consumption, every layer bought like a master track. Ghetto girl glory turned market slave, our rhythm sold to labels made modern-day minstrels, performing on white stages coated in black paint, selling sex appeal in red lips that smudge to clown shit. There's a war that I fear we're trying to fight back with pussy power. Got Carisha online talking of golden showers. If it ain't a Diddy or a blue-faced baby, it's a white one. Telling us how much to take or how much to fake, or sadly, it's one of us. Queens calling from the pawn pit, our voices bruising the beat no matter how upbeat the tempo. Y'all, don't hate me for this, but Even city girls' rhetoric sounds like an outcry. Dreams of urban suburbia, convincing themselves that diamonds could be their best friend in this game. You play or get played, I know. But as bad as I want to be a slim, fine mama with some twerk in her, I could never be up for trade, could never be bought for Birkins, Burberry, or a Benz, boy, not when I'm a ceremony of thunder waking up the earth, when I'm the body that began you and then some. It's only here that they could suffocate us and say we did it to ourselves. Sandra Bland us, we hang from their lyrical hooks and hold the horror long like a music note, then become the bridge until the beat ends. We leave the parties bleeding, but don't know it as blood. Have been the sacrifice over and over. How many more punchlines we gonna take before we call this thing a slow murder?
One of the best kept secrets of modern life is that the police do not prevent crime. Experts know it. The police know it. But the public does not know it. I want to explain why I think this is. The way we're brought up to think about crime and criminals is in a sort of absolutist, almost cartoonish way. That some people are bad and some people are good. Now, I do think some of us grow up and learn that that position's absurd and that people are more complicated than that. At the same time, we don't replace that illusion with anything else because we're scared to make the next mental jump. I've been in this boat myself, because to interrogate what police actually do, or how easy it is to become a criminal, if certain societal pressures want you to become a criminal. To interrogate it puts us in an immediately radical position that is so different than the white liberal mainstream. What do the police actually do? What do they actually protect? Let's look at history. What does it say? It shows us that the police have been invented as a way to protect property. In some contexts, that meant slave patrols, and in others, that meant watching factory workers because the rich bourgeoisie were afraid of people uprising and revolting. Because urbanization, in a lot of ways, put all these poor people in such close proximity to each other that their plight was more visible to each other and they had more political and organizational capabilities that they didn't have in rural societies where everything's out of view and more secluded. Now let me finish that quote from earlier. The police do not prevent crime, yet they pretend that they're society's best defense against crime. And they continually argue that if they're given more resources, especially personnel, they will be able to protect communities against crime. This is a myth. Now what's another way that they get us to think that professional policing is necessary for society? The media. The media has a huge negativity bias, especially in the US. When you turn on news, especially local news, what do they love to talk about all the time? Crime. They latch onto our negative emotions because it's easier to get our attention and keep us hooked that way. And a byproduct of this, either malevolent or maybe benign, is that we get further stuck into this fear mindset, scarcity mindset economically. Oh, the world is crazy, we need the police to protect us. And outside of news and media, including this, how much crime do you see? And this is going to sound unrelated, but it's definitely tied in. How much when you see a problem, say you're at a party and some people are like having a disagreement, how much do the people surrounding figure out the situation by themselves without policing? We know how to protect ourselves without professional policing. We've done so for like 99% of human history. And that's why in some black communities, you see, we don't even trust police. We learn how to de-escalate situations as a community and as a collective. The police are there to protect property, prevent social movements, and manage the behavior of poor and black folk.
Let's talk about anti-black black pastors.
Who told us you got to be a witch to be black? You are not more black by engaging in witchcraft. That is still propagating a white supremacist lie that black people in Africa didn't know Jesus.
Akil Perry's sermon is a prime example of what happens when the church becomes too anti-intellectual. She thinks she's challenging white supremacy, but she's actually perpetuating it.
I'm angry that the powers that be, that they are really trying to convince us that all spiritualism is the same. And we have digested this impurity and this, we want so bad not to be legalistic that we actually become profane.
In The Souls of Womanfolk by Professor Alexis Wells, who's an amazing professor at Stanford University, she talks about how, what we assign to be a religion and what we deny to be a legitimate religion is actually a racial and colonial project. So when we call witchcraft demonic, particularly black, spiritual and mystical practices demonic, we're actually engaging in white supremacy by denying that, non-Christian practices are still legitimate religious practices. And what's so sad about Jackie Hill Perry's sermon is that when we do the reading, when we look at the amazing work and research that's out there, we see how, Black enslaved women push back against colonialism and white supremacy under enslavement by using a variety of religious practices. Through sacred naming practices, through birthing rituals, and through other ways that they engage spirit power and God, Black women kept a community, the Black community, encouraged while experiencing the torment and torture of enslavement. That is beautiful and powerful.
Religion became about the practices and moments and ideas that helped them to piece themselves back together, whether it be, familial. So I looked at things like naming practices, because a lot of enslaved people would remember people that were sold away by naming their children after them. And it was just a way just to remember their name. They didn't have photographs. I could remember my mother's name, that's it. Sometimes they couldn't even remember their faces because they were taken so early, So it's just, these are the kinds of things that became religious, they became sacred. We've completely obliterated the humanity, the complexity, the individuality of these people who existed. And they walked around and they labored and they did things and they built monuments that we still have and they built homes that we still have and they created ideas that we still use, and we have just eliminated them.
So when from the pulpit we malign witchcraft as demonic, when we shame Black people for engaging in religious practices that are not Christianity, we're not only practicing white supremacy now, but we're also erasing the deep history of resistance that comes from a variety of religious traditions. Ultimately, Jackie Hill Perry's sermon denies Christianity as a colonial project, as a way that white people justified the scramble for Africa, the Middle Passage, and enslavement, the way that Black people were maligned as demonic because we were seen as farther from God, and the way that our enslavement was justified from this idea, the idea that we were so far from God, that the best that we could hope for was being under the hand of white supremacy. That sounds demonic to me. That sounds evil to me. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Ciara. I'm a DEI consultant and a theologian, so follow me for more content like this.
I pretended to like collard greens for the first 20 years of my life. Let that nasty, grassy green shit slide down my throat like a good girl. Swallowed and smiled, more grimace than grin, like, okay, that's so delicious. And the lie tastes like acid on the tongue, like regret, like wishful thinking. I wash it down anyways, because it's just habit like that. I've just been programmed that way, to eat whatever crosses my plate, to know I ain't going nowhere till that shit is spotless, to be grateful I have anything to eat at all. And my parents made sure I knew my free will won't free, that my choice won't a choice, that I was going to eat regardless if I liked it or not. And growing up in a household where no is more curse word than nigga means no gets caught in the back of my throat like neck bone, a thorn in my thorax waiting to be hacked up like ham hock. No, be a barrier, be a boundary, a broken bone, a bullet begging for me to pull the trigger. So the first time I told a nigga no and he didn't listen, my body froze. It remembered supper time before I could and said, you better eat whatever crosses your plate. You ain't going nowhere till that shit is spotless. Be grateful you have anything to eat at all. So I was, and I did, because that's what good girls do. Shrink ourselves until we're small enough to swallow whole. Let our bodies be a rest stop. Force feed ourselves collard greens for 20 years instead of saying no thank you. I hate that shit. So when I have kids, I'ma make sure they know that no be a battle cry. Dare you to fucking try me. Goddamn right, because God forbid their autonomy be absent. God forbid their bodies only know what it can do for others. God forbid they choke down nose like chewing gum and spit out sanctuaries like sunflower seeds. No, It's my new favorite word. I said, no, you can't fuck me or no. This shit ain't yours. This shit all mine. No, you don't tell me what to do with this body. And no, I don't want none of your nasty ass motherfucking collard greens.
You don't truly understand the nuances of white supremacy if you don't understand how it informs your spirituality.
So I recently came back from a trip to Ghana, which I went to for a wedding. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to go visit the Gold Coast Castle. The Gold Coast Castle is one of the places that they enslaved Black people. They held Africans there before forcing them onto the ships across the Atlantic for the slave trade as we know it. And one of the things that really stood out to me about this is the fact that as we were walking through and we're seeing all of the dungeons that African people were enslaved in, learning about the conditions that they had to survive in, that people would go blind because it was so dark in these dungeons and they were not exposed to sunlight throughout this time. So that way, when they went out into the sunlight, they could not see. Or the fact that food would be thrown from windows at the top and land in the bodily excrements of all the people forced to stay together. Or the fact that people would not always realize that the person in front of them had died until they touched them and felt the coldness of their bodies. And then, of course, the decomposing smell. It is brutal and it is gruesome, and it was such an emotional experience for me. But what really tripped me out is the fact that on top of these dungeons was a Christian church. Yes, there was a church on top of the dungeons where enslaved Africans were held before being forced across the Atlantic. And the man who was conducting the tour was explaining how sometimes the pastor, even thinking about it and re-listening is just making me shake, was talking about how the pastor would sometimes, when he was feeling very benevolent, toss some food in right on into, before stepping into the sanctuary. And when you consider that that same religion has been used to cause so much trauma, and I am saying this as the daughter of a preacher. When you learn this, and then I had the privilege of being able to see this firsthand, going to this place where people who look like me were enslaved, it really makes you wonder about Christianity and what it is that we are holding on so tightly to. And so if me being open to the idea of accepting that my ancestors fought for so many things, and that if I'm here, it's because of all of that they had endured, and I choose to venerate them, if I choose to acknowledge the spiritualness of our experience and our existence, if that makes me a witch, then I guess I'm a witch.
Decide to speak up on this kind of stuff, make sure that you're willing to quit your job if you have to. Research has actually shown that when marginalized people speak up on these issues in the workplace, it generally actually hurts their careers. When you first bring the issue up, everyone's going to act like they care. And in 2023, everyone knows what the right things to say are. They'll be like, oh my gosh, thank you for raising awareness of this issue. But then no one actually wants to do more work than they need to. And so nothing changes, and you're
I wasn't able to stitch the video for longer than 60 seconds, so go watch their video. Whenever I've been working at all of my jobs, I've always hated conversations around diversity and inclusion because I've always felt like they don't actually mean anything. It's more so just an optical conversation for the organization. Like within the past maybe 2 to 3 years, I've had so many conversations about diversity and inclusion in clinical research specifically, in the workplace as well as in our studies. And I know most marginalized groups don't like to hear about clinical research because of all the horrible atrocities that have taken place, and rightfully so. And this is something that I've always tried to convey to the companies that I've worked for. But anyway, it's an exhausting conversation to be a part of as a person of color because you almost always know that nothing is actually going to happen. There's no change that's actually going to be instrumental. And so it gets to the point that you're talking until you're blue in the face, but there's no real benefit for doing that. As an example, at a company I was working for, we had issues with diversity in our studies, and I was not surprised by this, but the agency that we went to talk about our study was saying, you know, there wasn't much diversity in this trial, like we're not able to move forward with this medicine until it reflects the population in which you're going to serve, which makes sense. But the company I was working for kind of just like dodged all the questions around diversity and inclusion, and they're like, oh, there's no difference, there's it doesn't matter, basically it's the same in everybody, which isn't true. And there have been so many pharmacokinetic and dynamic studies that have proven that race does impact how medicine manifests in the body. And so after that call, I had a meeting with one of my superiors who was also a part of that conversation. And I just basically went on a rant saying how frustrated I was that companies aren't paying more attention to the importance of diversity in the studies as well as in the workplace. And I personally believe, and I 100% know with a fact, that our studies would be a lot more diverse and marginalized communities would begin to trust healthcare companies if they actually employ people who looked like them. More importantly, if they took a moment to address the traumas that occurred as a result of these companies, you can regain trust within the communities you want to serve. And the person I was talking to was like, yeah, you are absolutely right. But the company has done a lot. And, we have a lot going on that's trying to address this. We work with community-based organizations, yada, yada, yada. Obviously not enough if the agency you are working with is telling you that you haven't done enough. But to make a long story short, I've gotten tired of the diversity inclusion conversation, so I've just taken my own approach by creating content on biotech and biopharma to let marginalized people know that they belong in those rooms. Because that's honestly the only way change will happen.
For the Black kids in my 8th grade Spanish class, for Eddie, T, Alexis, Michelle, island at the center of the room, dark utopia in the middle of middle school. When the girls I was friends with in 6th grade started bullying me in 8th grade, I stopped talking to them. In retaliation, they pushed me in the halls, shoved my books out of my hands and talked shit, loud, in class, for everyone to hear. Worst of all, they made fun of my Spanish. So I drifted to sit with the Black kids, and it was there, in the classroom of Senora Quiñones, the 4 desks in the middle of the room, I could unveil my whole self without shame. For the group of people who helped me find my natural rhythm, who taught me to trust it, to be Black and laugh with my whole body. For Alexis and Michelle, who laughed and showed every tooth, every time, who dragged joy from their lungs and threw their happiness in the air. When they reached you, you couldn't help but catch on and make the happy sounds too. For T, who chuckled at my jokes, wrote the lyrics to Roses by Kanye West in my notebook so I would fall in love with hip-hop too. And for Eddie, the quiet brother, taking notes in the back, who once shouted, "Where the hell is my pinche cuaderno?" so loud. All us Black kids shouted, then laughed, till tears poured out like music notes, and there we were, filling the space with the sound of us again. The descendants of slaves have always been the kindest to me. Eddie and I were the only ones good at Spanish. The others were good at being free. Blackness, the gift my father gave me, is the most human thing I have ever been blessed to be. Bond that cannot be broken should we choose it over supremacy. I have never needed a country to love me, just Black people. I have never needed heaven, just Black people. Eddie, Alexis, Michelle, T, you gave me permission to love being Black. Who taught you to love the texture of your hair and the color of your skin, the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to love yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to love your own kind, the race you belong to, so much so that you only want to be around each other, to be what God gave you? Beautiful because we chose to be, together because we're better that way. When I tell you no one in the world makes me laugh like Black people, makes me love like Black people, I mean, it's the first thing people notice about me. It's the first prayer I wake to and the longest song I am grateful to sing. Should I ever be shamed inward for wearing a dark cloud on my head? Should I ever think myself better for being a lighter color? Let me remember the dark utopia from whence I come. Should I ever forget that Black people have demonstrated the greatest acts of humanity, of courage, that we are no one's second choice, that no matter where they put us on a map, we will find each other, create our own world, and they will be enough. Let us be enough.
You know what, at first I was sad because I came to class thinking I had a lecture just for me to come and meet this. You might have guessed already, I checked the calendar wrong. But that is not the point. The point, the topic of today is that we are going to put into practice what my mother taught me. Sorry, we encountered some technical issues, but nonetheless, the producer has put us back on track because that's where I came from. Going back to what my mother said, in every atom of sadness, find a molecule of happiness. Yard, I'm speaking in chemistry now, I'm breathing in Avogadro's law. Don't play with it, don't play with it, don't play with it. Today is practical day. Today we are gonna put that into practice. Today I'm gonna do what I've always wanted to do. No more walking to wait for those idiot, stupid people on the road. And this place is soundproof. Nobody can hear me outside. Hey! Idiot outside, can you hear me? I don't have to walk. I don't have to do none of that. Woo! Woo! Yeah! Kings of the jungle! I swear no one can hear me. If a man is pain, I can make it with the blood of religion in my vein. No one can hear me. I need your Fuji, I need you, but I'm on the camera. I didn't bow, stand, shoot, get my I need your Fuji, I need a rush. In a rush, well, living much. Yeah, that's you, baby. Oh, stop cheering for me. And the crowd goes wild. Maxo. So I'm gonna stand up, take my. Who is colonizing who now? Who is the colonizer? Who is colonizing who? No, tell me. I'm the colonizer. I'm colonizing every single one of y'all bitches. Yarn! I'm such a petty little bitch, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Whenever we talk about when men are the victims of SA, we always agree that it's awful to say like, oh.
Do y'all remember that video from a few years ago of this person who was at a party and they had a hole in their shirt and people came up to them and started ripping their shirt apart so that their chest was exposed? In this instance, the person whose shirt was ripped was a man and the people who were ripping the shirt were women. And I remember there being this huge debate about the video of whether or not it was harassment or assault. And the huge thing was people were saying, oh, it's not that bad. And the only way people could really understand it is by saying, would you feel the same if the genders were switched? If somebody had told you a story of a woman who had happened to go to a party with a small rip in their shirt and men came over and started ripping their shirt apart, would you be upset about it? And the biggest counterpoint was, yeah, but this time it's a guy. It's so alarming to me that men can look so visibly uncomfortable with the situation or even verbally express that they are uncomfortable over something, and people will continue because they're a man. And it's very important for people to learn what sexual assault and harassment looks like, not just for women, but for men. Because so many people literally don't know that they're going through it or even perpetuating it. Because there is a very solid line between a compliment and harassment. There is a very solid line between touching in a flirtatious way versus assault. And the longer I think about it, the more cases I have seen of men being put in positions where they are visibly uncomfortable for the punchline, where you could just as easily say, what if the genders were reversed? I remember for a while there were two different trends that were happening, 2 different years, when it had to do with seats. A guy would be sitting by themselves and a woman would come over and straddle him. And that was the whole joke. And I remember there being so many videos of guys looking genuinely uncomfortable, and everybody thought those were funny. Then there were videos of girls who were sitting in a seat by themselves and guys coming up behind them and pushing themselves into the seat forcibly. A lot of people thought it was funny, but there was also a lot of people who thought that was wildly inappropriate. Nobody said that a woman straddling a man's lap without their consent is wildly inappropriate. Most outcry happens when it is a woman who is in a position of vulnerability. It is not only important to talk about how men are conditioned to believe that they can't be sexually harassed, but how women are socially conditioned to believe that they can't harass a man.
Because you lost control. When a child can tell their parents no, you done lost control.
All right, buddy, when you finish with this round, I need you to get up and get ready for bed, all right? Oh, that wasn't a request. I was telling you, buddy, I need you to get ready for bed. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. I understand you want to keep playing your game. I know you want a game. I love it. Yes. However, you have school in the morning, and I don't want your grades to suffer because you're falling asleep in class. So I'm going to give you to the end of this round. And if I have to come back and tell you to get up, you're not going to play your game tomorrow. You understand? But if you get up correctly, I will give you an extra 20 minutes to play your game tomorrow. Does that sound like a deal? All right, now don't have me come back in here because I'm going to turn off the game as well as not allow you to play tomorrow. All right, I'm going to set a timer over here. All right? Okay. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not finna sit here and argue with no kid. That's just not in my realm of things I'm finna do. I'm the adult. I already have authority. I already have control. I already have power. The kids know that. They're going to obviously push my buttons to try to get around something. I know that. I don't care. I know how to establish boundaries in a way that still gets what I want and gets them what they want. But then I also know how to pull rank. But I'm not going to sit here and hit my child to make them do the things that I need them to do. That's not how things work. If my child says no, if any kid says no, I'm not going to hit them because they have feelings that are opposing mine. Where does that make sense? I wouldn't even do that to my spouse. I wouldn't do that to anybody. We have to recognize that children are different than us. They're not going to always be in 100% agreement with us, especially as they get older and start to develop their own personal identity. So when it comes down to any form of power struggle, it really is just our own insecurity and our own unwillingness to let go of the fact that our children are not attached to us and they're not subservient to us. And if you're trying to get your child to be subservient to you, that's slave mentality. You need to work that out in yourself. But when you negotiate with your child, you're teaching them so many things: effective communication, empathy, self-advocacy, all these things that are necessary for independent adults to have when they get older. If you were just yelling at your child and trying to command all of this authority and control, what do you think they're going to do when they get older? They'll either be super submissive to people in authority, or they're going to be the same way to other people and demand subservience from other people.
When I use my mind, I win the race. I am the moon and the rising sun. My new shit has just begun. I can take you higher. I can take you low. If you worry that way, I know who I saw. What I went through with my homies, baby. Don't worry, don't
That nigga be that freak and that chat and be that cool cat. As Miss Provinci trying to play before full black. If something's on your chest, then let it be known. See, I'm not every 5 minutes all on the phone and on the top of the trust. It's just a matter of fact that people be biting backs and trying to fax it what's ever be I ain't on some, I'm a celebrity. I deal with the veil, and if it's artificial, let it be. I see people caught in love like whirlwinds, listening to they squad, fucking with girlfriends. That's exactly the spot. They whole world and lies come in. That's where the drama begins.
If you were worried about where I know who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby.
Shout out y'all.
If you were worried about where I know who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby. Don't worry. If you were worried about where I've been, oh, baby, don't worry. I take you everywhere. You know it's a yes when I am faithful to you.
telling people who are no contact with their parents that they need to either make things right.
I think what a lot of people miss is that a lot of us didn't actually want to go no contact with our parents. We were forced to, because when a parent puts a child in a position where the child has to choose themselves and their mental health over the emotional, physical, spiritual damage that's being done to the child by the parent, it's one of the most difficult decisions that an individual can make. And I think it's really important to note that a lot of us understand the trauma that our parents went through prior to having us. We understand that they didn't have the resources that we have now. We understand that they didn't grow up the way that we have grown up with them. But all we have ever asked of them is to stop treating us as if what they've done to us has had no impact on us, especially when we've taken the time to understand how their lives and their parents have impacted them. I told my mother directly that I would rather be homeless on the street with nothing and have a healthy relationship with her than have her speak to me and treat me the way that she has. And it still didn't click for her. I went through some of the worst losses in my life, and she mocked the entire situation. So for me, when a parent kicks a child when they're at the low points that I have faced, you forced me to go no contact with you, because at that point, contact with you is causing me physical harm. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of us have very internal reactions to the hurt and pain that our parents have caused us that manifests itself in a physical nature. For me, I start shaking, I get night sweats, I start having panic attacks. It affects me to the point where I can't even mentally focus. And this has shown up in a plethora of my relationships, romantic relationships with partners who mirrored behavior of my parents, specifically my mother and my father. Well, yeah, those are my parents. I mean, I don't claim them. Anyway, what I'm saying is people have to push a lot of us to the point of no contact, because a lot of us want those very relationships that you guys are telling us that we need. That's your mom, that's your dad, that's your husband, that's your sister, that's your auntie, that's your uncle. Okay, and who am I? Who am I? Do I not matter in this equation? Because if I'm not going to matter to you, them, I have to matter to myself. Like, I can't just continue to put everyone ahead of me. And that's why a lot of us have chosen to go no contact. And there are plenty of us that are not going to come back for the inheritance because we never needed your money. We wanted your love, respect, kindness, protection, care. That's what we wanted. And I'm not saying that money doesn't matter, because it does, but what mattered more was love and respect for my parents, not what they gave me. And I've been an empath and a people pleaser, so if I had to cut somebody off, I had to be pushed there, because doormats put up with everything.
You have 30 seconds to grab anything you need off the platform to create a next level taco.
Let's do it.
30 seconds starts now. You can grab anything you need. Anything you need. 23 seconds. Anything. Grab it. 28, 29. Done. Platform gone now. I'll take that. 45 minutes to create a next level taco. Your time starts now. So what do you plan on making for us today, Chef?
Right now I'm working on my salsa. I'm gonna roast the corn and mix it with the tomatoes, cilantro, and also with some shallots.
What are you pairing that salsa with?
Shrimp taco.
I look forward to your dip, Chef.
Thank you.
29 seconds and 43 minutes. 29 minutes and 41 seconds on the clock, Chef.
29 seconds. Can you also take out the shrimp, Chef?
Perfect fucking bite.
Thank you, Chef.
That's amazing, Chef. Take the salsa.
Shrimp is still perfect. I'm excited about this one.
Salsa is amazing, Chef.
My salsa is on point. My flavors are on point. My shrimp is on point. Everything's on point.
24 seconds on the clock, Chef.
24 seconds, Chef?
24 minutes, 23 minutes. 3 minutes and 45 seconds on the clock, Chef.
Thank you, Chef.
You know what goes great with fucking tacos?
What? Spice.
Guac.
Guac.
That's your mid-time grab. Get to work. Sorry, Chef, platform's gone. 6 minutes and 36 seconds on the clock, Chef. 3 minutes, 57 seconds on the clock, Chef. 1 minute, 38 seconds on the clock, Chef. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time.
Boom, 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 boom.
Chef Zagala looked like he was really doing his thing. Those tacos look beautiful. I'm excited to try them. Speechless, Chef. Let's take another bite.
I'm happy. Let's go. Made a next level dish.
Church requires anti-intellectualism to function.
So true, and that's because the Black church is about power, not about salvation. Now, this is not specific to the Black church. This is true of all man-made religions, but we're talking about the Black church today. So the reason why the anti-intellectual bent in the Black church currently is because once upon a time in the antebellum period, Reconstruction, even post-Reconstruction, the preacher or the minister was most often the most educated member of the community, one of the few people who could read or who had the Bible memorized. And so because of that knowledge and because of the relative illiteracy enforced by law by the rest of the community, they would follow whatever this guy said blindly. Okay? Reminds me of that quote from Dangerous Liaisons. They would accord that worship to the priest, which was only due to the divinity. And this is why today you still see that attitude in many Black people. Oh my God, the pastor's infallible. This man speaks directly for God, when the Bible literally says God does not need an intermediary. But nonetheless, this is the origin of that. And as time went on and Black people gained more and more access to education, the preacher was just another person. Add to that, in the Black community, many times the preacher is not formally educated. You know, many of these men did not go to seminary, did not go get any degrees in divinity, theology, religion, none of that. Did no official studies, but expect you to have that same blind obedience and faith that people had 100 years ago. So rather than getting their education game up, they try to drive a wedge between intellectualism and faith. And they literally tell you, oh, you can't be too smart, you can't be educated. That's going to hinder your ability to believe in God, to believe in miracles, to listen to your pastor. Well, yeah, because if you're an educated person, you're not going to run around following someone who's not making any sense blindly. But I just think it's funny how the church loves doctors and lawyers when it comes to getting that tithe, but they hate education when it comes to the congregants, because they don't want you to be able to use your powers of investigation, of deciphering, of reading comprehension to tell that this person is pulling a big scam. They want to be able to maintain that same power nexus they had back in the day that was completely uninterrupted, where people followed blindly. This is nothing but a power consolidation move, because the Black church is still one of the only spaces where Black and educated men can reign supreme. A lot of these megachurch preachers or these prosperity gospel guys haven't been near a seminary. And, a lot of these local preachers and whatnot are ex-cons. These people are looking for individuals to prey upon. And if you can use your intellectual skill and whatnot to challenge what they say, they will be out of a job. Like and follow for more.
Your hate for children is oppressive. Your hate for children is oppressive. And I'm going to remind y'all again and again and again and again and again and again. A lot of people look at videos of teachers getting into physical fights with children over phones and stuff in schools and immediately jump on the sides of these adults and these teachers. And I get it, because I love teachers. I'm a social worker. Of course, I love teachers. We're like this. We locked in. But a lot of y'all advocate for the abuse and harm of children. I'm not going to skip over the reality that there is a harmful way to use technology. Technology can be used in a way that's unhealthy and that is not a part of the learning process. Absolutely, I agree. But there's no way that justifies putting your hand on a child. You should not be snatching a child's phone. You should not be forcibly tugging with a child over a phone. You should not be withholding their property if they're getting aggressive about that property. You become the problem at that point as the adult in the situation.
All of this to say that a lot of you refuse to look at children as a marginalized group of people that they are, and you often advocate for policies that disadvantage them instead of work with them to teach them and to help them grow. If you see a kid using a phone in the room, you can integrate that into the experience of learning and teach them. Okay, you can teach them how to use technology properly. And there's a way to do that without being forceful, and there's a way to do that without literally harming a child. I said this, and suddenly the 10 years I worked with youth myself just like went out the window. Me having all the de-escalation training, me having like my degrees and stuff, it just doesn't mean anything, right? I wonder why it's so easy to assume that I'm uneducated, but that's neither here nor there. Children are human beings. They don't even have fully developed brains. They require patience when you work with them, and they deserve to have rights just like us. They don't deserve to be forced to do anything. They have the right to self-determination just like anybody else. If there's going to be natural consequences, give them natural consequences, but none of those consequences should ever be you putting your hand on somebody's kid, not even your own kid. And y'all hate that so much, but that's because you went through similar cycles of abuse. Stop putting other people through that. That's it.
My 6-year-old has been getting in trouble at school to the point where not only did we get an email, her daddy called me in the middle of the day about the email, like, we need to do something about this. So I'm like, what did she do? And he's like, apparently she used the middle finger. She was arguing with a teacher. She's been misbehaving and not getting her work done. And I'm like, Tuesday? Homegirl can barely do the peace sign and fucking rock on. How the hell did she manage to get her middle finger up this way or this way? And as a former educator, I know kids act different when they're around other people. But I was like, we need to get a game plan together. It makes no sense for us to ambush her and be angry because that's only going to make her fearful and it's not going to provide any of us any understanding. So we need to sit down and talk to her, but maybe we should do good cop, and you take some topics and I take some topics and we talk to her at different times. That way it's not too much because she's sick. She's not finna retain all the shit we finna say. When her daddy asked why were you arguing with the teacher, she said that the teacher that caught her was going to go tell her actual teacher, and she got frustrated because she wouldn't let her explain herself. And I don't consider the frustrated explanation being argumentative, but I can understand when you have so many fucking kids that you're in charge of, you don't have time to be sitting there going back and forth. So I asked her, why are we misbehaving and not getting all of our work done? She said, I talk too much and my brain gets confused when my friends are talking to me, and I get frustrated when I don't have enough time to do my work. As somebody who had 80% of their report cards say that I was a fucking social butterfly, just for me to grow up and talk shit for a living and be an actual social butterfly, I had this one in the bag. Now she was explaining things to me. I noticed she was getting frustrated, so I said, Tuesday, you want to hold hands? And she immediately calmed down once we did. And I had to teach myself a while ago that holding her hands is not coddling her while you were looking to course correct her. It's connecting. She needs to still feel safe. Otherwise, you ain't gonna get no motherfucking answers. And now this is an interrogation. Are you an interrogator? Talked about staying focused and created a system for when we get frustrated. We're gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna try again. We're gonna ask questions. And if the teacher doesn't have time to help, we're just gonna give her our best because that's all we can do, because teachers don't have help either. So even if it's not a competition, I feel like I won parenting today, because knowing what to do when you're frustrated and they're frustrated and still trying to find a common ground and a solution, bitch.
Hey, me and the wife doing a gender reveal for the baby this weekend. You should help us plan it. People still do those? Yeah, of course. Why? So we can know the trajectory of our child's lives? You don't hear yourself? What are you talking about? I mean, even just with short-term stuff. I need to know what color I'm going to paint the nursery, what clothes to get, a name. I don't think the baby's going to care for colors. I just think that's a for you thing. Pick a couple of names, or a gender-neutral one, I guess. And most babies stay crawling around in just a diaper anyway. To hell with the clothes. Okay, well, not just that. You know, I want to know how I'm going to be spending the toddler years. Having tea parties or throwing around an old pigskin. You can do those things with any kid. Well, yeah, but like, which one are they more likely to want to do, you know? Assuming they have free will, either one. It could still be either one. Well, what about the teen years, you know? Am I going to be looking at over-aggression, you know? I'm going to have to get a couple body slams in, or, you know, a bunch of tears and PMS. Okay, fine. I take that one back. I take it back. But I want to know who I might be looking at. You know, is the kid going to look a lot like me or my wife? I mean, I'd look like my mom. And a lot of these hoes be walking around looking like their daddy. Look, your baby girl could be the most pigskin throwing, aggressive 6'1" version of you. And your son could be the most tea party having, snatched waist, fattest ass version of your wife. I'm just trying to say, I don't really think a gender reveal tells you anything. And I'm surprised people still care. Not to mention, regardless of what genitals are between your child's legs, any role you push onto them is more of a reflection on you and society deciding to push something as stupid is that onto them in the first place? Oh. Well, now I feel attacked. Oh, no, don't worry. That really isn't the point of this skit. I just needed something to post. Oh, okay.
Hey y'all, what's up? It's Saturday, so I'm gonna keep it black.
But I'm gonna keep it brief.
I'm sorry. What?
Well, hi, Lene. How are you?
Madam Vice President, what are you doing in my parking lot?
Well, this is actually an undisclosed location, but I am here to talk with you.
Right, Secret Service. Well, I'm here to talk about gun violence. Again.
Let's get into it.
Last Wednesday in Atlanta, Georgia, 24-year-old Dion Patterson walked into the waiting room of Northside Medical Center around lunchtime and opened fire with a semi-automatic handgun, killing one woman and wounding 4 others. And I'd really love to talk about something else. I really would. But this shooting actually happened just 2 blocks away from me while my man was outside walking the dog. And it seems like more and more communities are going to have to be touched by gun violence for the call to action to be loud enough for some type of meaningful legislation to happen. Inquiring minds want to know, why doesn't there seem to be any talk of an executive order?
Well, actually, the president signed an executive order in March.
What? That wasn't in my notes?
Yes, and that's not all. President Biden and I believe that all people in all communities deserve to be safe, and that is why President Biden signed the most significant gun reform legislation in nearly 30 years. And then he took executive action. President Biden signed an executive order that strengthens background checks, keeps guns out of dangerous hands, and cracks down on gun dealers who break the law. These are important steps, but there is so much more to do.
So you two have done what's in your power, and now we're waiting on Congress?
Exactly. Congress must have the courage to act and keep Americans safe.
Thank you for the clarification. And it's interesting, seeing as some members of Congress seem to be currently occupied with bills about CRT, anti-trans legislation, anti-abortion legislation, and now attempts to mandate that the 10 Commandments be displayed in K-12 classrooms. But I digress. Ooh. Now, the attack itself only lasted about 2 minutes, but 1, the people there and their families will be affected for a lifetime. And 2, everyone in the surrounding buildings and areas had to shelter in place for hours because they could not locate the shooter. Patterson was able to cross the street, carjack a truck, and subsequently lead multiple police departments on an 8-hour manhunt. And all this may seem like an extremely audacious scenario, one that would come straight out of a scene of Donald Glover's Atlanta. But this is what happens again when guns are so easily accessible and when background checks do not adequately screen gun buyers.
The policy changes we need are really pretty straightforward. We need background checks. We need red flag laws. Because here's the thing, you might want to know before someone buys a gun whether they have been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You just might want to know. I think it's reasonable. And by the way, most gun owners agree. Even the majority of Americans support background checks for all gun purchases.
Repeatedly, we see that some mass shooters often suffer from or have had a history of mental illness. So how is it that we live in a country where someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis has an easier time getting their hands on an automatic weapon than the care and the help that they need?
It's pretty straightforward. There are not enough leaders in state houses and in the United States Congress who have the courage to fight for the safety of our children. If they did, they would pass these common sense gun safety laws.
For the safety of our children is correct. And I don't know if y'all know this, but part of our vice president's job is to physically travel across the country as one of our nation's leaders. So she was here in Atlanta after the shooting in the massage parlor in 2021, in Chicago last year after the shooting in Highland Park, and Buffalo, New York when we lost some of our black elders in that grocery store, and then in Nashville to stand in solidarity with the Tennessee Three. And she wasn't just offering condolences, but stressing the fact that we do not have to live like this, and making it plain that we will not be silenced in this effort to ban assault weapons.
Let us reject the false choice that you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want reasonable gun safety laws. We can and we must do both.
Tell the truth, shame the devil.
We need leaders to join President Biden and me and step up and protect our children.
Because how are you going to be a leader when all you're doing is following?
Great question.
We have had 210 mass shootings this year so far. 210. And I realize to Americans, these numbers probably don't even sound crazy anymore. So let me break it down for you a little bit. In each of the last 3 years, America has surpassed over 600 mass shootings. Not just gun deaths, not just gun-related incidents, but mass shootings. 610 in 2020, 690 in 2021, and 647 in 2022. And that's just about 2 a day on average. And I'm tired of preaching to the choir, so yeah, y'all have signed the first gun safety legislation in 30 years and an executive order. But if one side of Congress seems to be twiddling their thumbs, the question is, what are we voting for at this point?
You've seen the stats. Gun violence is now the #1 cause of death of our children in this nation. And 1 in 5 Americans has lost a family member due to gun violence. And you know, while all this violence impacts communities in devastating ways, we know it does not do so equally. Black people are only 13% of America's population, but more than 60% of homicide victims from gun violence.
Well said, Madam Vice President. It's time to get back to work. And I think we're going to need some more tea.
More tea.
And more tea is exactly what you're going to get in our very special episode of The Let Out featuring Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. Stay tuned.
Let's talk about the TD Jakes video.
It's gonna be rough this morning, bro.
Recently, a clip of TD Jakes went viral in which he makes a critique of gender role dynamics in contemporary society.
We are raising up women to be men, and you are not applauded for your femininity. You are applauded in the contemporary society by how tough, rough, nasty, mean, aggressive, hateful, possessive you are, and you are climbing the corporate ladder, but we are losing our families.
And as always, what I'm going to share is less about one person than it is about church culture as a whole. The message was preached on Father's Day of this year and was entitled Real Men Pour In. It was largely about role inflexibility, that both men and women have unique divine designs that when disrupted causes things to fall apart. He says this has been an issue since Adam and Eve.
If Adam had not allowed Eve to pour into him, sin would have never come into the world.
And he connects this patriarchal interpretation of the creation story to contemporary society.
Your self-esteem is compromised when you have to ask your wife for lunch money. When Adam started eating out of his wife's hand, sin came in because the divine order was broken.
There's so much to say on this, but here's a few points. TD Jakes said that women are being raised to be men, and these are the traits he goes on to associate with masculinity.
Tough, rough, nasty, mean, aggressive, hateful, possessive.
He then says that women have to create space for men to pour into their lives from their rightful masculine roles. He basically says women have to shrink themselves in order for men to come in and be their leaders. And my question is, why is it the responsibility of women to shrink themselves in order to make space for men? It's because this is not about women being raised to be men or climbing the corporate ladder. It's about control. In the eyes of patriarchy, there can be no relationship without control. Men aren't shying away from marriage and relationships. They want those things. And studies show that they're happier when they have them. That's why they've created entire platforms dedicated to educating and teaching women about their roles. It is women that are opting out of toxicity, control, and suppression under patriarchy. Women are opting out of all the traits Pastor TD Jakes associated with masculinity for their own sake. Can I be very clear? Women are not inferior to men and they don't want to be treated as such. Women by and large want partnership. Men under patriarchy want servitude and submission. And that is the disconnect. And this kind of role inflexibility is rooted in white supremacy. Messages like these leave women in the church vulnerable to violence and abuse, and create space for men to theologically rationalize that abuse. And as a man whose church was both built and sustained by black women, TD Jakes and others like him need to be far more mindful of their theology and words. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and like and follow for more content.
She told me I'd be on the road. Oh, baby, I miss you. I can't wait for you to come home. I thought, I flew home with visions. She kissed me, say, I'm so glad you home. And went back to watching Lifetime Murders. I went in my man cave. I thought about killing her. I thought, no, that wouldn't be the right thing to do.
As usual, my therapist was right. She said, you need to figure out how to sustain yourself through this writer's strike or risk serious burnout. Well, it's only been 2 weeks and I am exhausted. Let me go back to the beginning. In 2016, I got my very first TV writing job after 10 years of making online videos, including hosting, writing, and producing MTV Decoded. Since then, I've gotten to do some pretty amazing things, but it has not been easy. I work a lot, but mostly because TV does not pay the way that I thought it would. I've sold a pilot every year since 2017, and not one of them has gone to series. Now, do not get me wrong, I'm very grateful and proud of the work that I've done, but it has been so hard to keep pushing and believing myself in the face of so much rejection and sometimes outright mistreatment from people in this industry. So, leading up to the strike, I was finishing a second script for a show I've been developing with a streamer for about 2 years now. And for the first time in a while, I was feeling really excited. But now that we're on strike, who knows if that project will ever see the light of day. I'm really glad that people are enjoying the content that I'm making about the writer's strike. It makes me feel empowered and productive and like I'm doing something that matters. But this isn't just content for me, this is actually my life. And so it's really hard to read messages from strangers, former classmates, friends, and followers who insist that TV writers are asking for too much, or maybe you should just get another job, or, well, I'm at such and such job and I make way less. I'm spending multiple hours a day, multiple days a week picketing, then I'm doing press, and I'm spending hours dispelling misinformation, making content about the strike that I'm not being paid for. It's physically and emotionally exhausting. And so that is why I'm taking a self-imposed social media break. And while I'm gone, I'm going to focus on restorative ways to keep myself engaged and empowered and push through this thing for however long it's going to take. I'm going to do crafts. I'm going to go on hikes with my dog. I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to work on my podcast and my book and try to find a new normal until the strike ends and I can go back to work. So thank you for being in my corner, friends. I will see you when I return in a few weeks.
This is fun. This is you. This is a new friend. This is fun. Woo!
she's amazing, she's fun, we like the same music, like this girl's amazing. The closer you get, the better you can see her inadequacies, shortcomings. Ooh, the more you are touched by her insufficiencies. Okay? The closer you get. And that's to be expected because both of you are bringing your own needs, desires, goals, boundaries, preferences. You're bringing your own set. Don't you think at some point those things are going to converge and compete against one another because you're different people with competing interests? Sometimes that's going to happen. So some of us like to stay like this because whenever we start to see stuff, we go running. I cut people off if they make one mistake. I don't know. I don't like this. We have a critic's mindset. So you know what I hear when you're critical or when you try to flex about cutting people off? That you don't experience platonic intimacy. That's what you just told me. Okay? And for those of you who are scared of being intimately known, you're scared you're going to be exposed, that there's something about you that's inherently repellent and you don't want people to see your mess. I don't want to get too close. I want them to see. You also are revealing something about maybe your experience or capacity for platonic intimacy. These things go together. So what are we going to do? If you want that platonic intimacy that you see people talking about where you can show up as yourself, you are accepted, all those things, you have to accept some people's flaws and shortcomings. And you have to be vulnerable enough to make yours known to others. That's secure attachment. That is healthy conflict. I'm just saying.
So last night, this happened.
Oh my God! That made sense. Hi!
I got a chance to meet Aniko in person and tell them how much they meant to me, how much their music inspires me to speak, and how it gives me courage on days when I feel most overwhelmed. I spent time in the meet and greet line searching for the words to say as I moved up to the front, but they weren't as eloquent as I wanted them to be when I got to them because I was so nervous. But they were thrilled to see me as well, and they offered me so many encouraging words. Imagine someone who inspires me to keep doing the work with their music is inspired by the work that I do. I was blown away. My heart is full and I feel so grateful. The show itself was one of the most breathtaking concert experiences that I've been a part of. Aniko did all their hits, of course, like The King's Affirmation, Jericho, and Yosemite. Then there was the point where they asked if there were any Jamaicans in the crowd. I yelled so loud, y'all. Aniko's Jamaican as well, and they went on to cover a song that my grandfather sang all the time. Aniko's music is about liberation. It's about revolution. It's about shifting the status quo. It's about being a voice for the marginalized and for the oppressed. It's about knowing who you are and standing fully in that. So Aniko, I want to thank you again for your work and witness. It is pushing me and inspiring me in ways that go beyond any words that I could articulate. The words in your music are a meditation, an affirmation, and a reminder. So thank you 1,000 times. The work continues. Love and light to you all, and as always, like and follow for more content.
Information that you're sharing, like, people regardless of how they react, regardless of the wild people that read your comments, you are so necessary. Every time your video comes up, I repost my own video. So, like, I'm about to cry. I'm literally, like, you're meant for greatness. Like, you're on the path to it. Like, okay, let's get a picture. Let's do it. Wow.
1, 2, 3.
Y'all want a hot take? I got a hot take for you. Trolls World Tour handled a racism allegory better than Zootopia, which won an Academy Award for it. And no, I'm not kidding. I'm completely serious. Kenna, you're 24. Why were you watching Trolls World Tour? I don't have to answer to you. But truly, genuinely, and unironically, I think Trolls 2 handled a racism allegory better than 97% of movies made by white people. And that sounds like it can't possibly be true, but hear me out. My big problem with Zootopia, which if you've been here a while, you've probably heard before, is that while I understand that an allegory, especially for something as complex as racism, is never going to be one-to-one, I do think you should be really careful with your racism allegories, that you're not inadvertently perpetuating a racist stereotype, and to have the predators be the one coded as marginalized or non-white, yeah, that's a pretty vicious stereotype that has gotten a lot of non-white people killed. The idea that non-white people are naturally more savage or violent or predispositioned towards violence and being a predator is a huge part of the rhetoric that's been used to justify our oppression and white people shooting us on sight. And I would say that those two things are honestly the biggest problem with most racism allegories, is that the non-white coded group is actually a different species, which often coincides with the second thing, which is that the oppressors have a legitimate reason to be fearful of the oppressed. And that was not how racism happened. So what makes the allegory in Trolls World Tour different is that regardless of how different any of the trolls look from each other, and some of them do look like they could be two entirely different species, they are all still trolls, and that is very much understood and reinforced the entire movie. But where this movie's racism allegory went like level 2 for me is when Poppy and Branch eventually meet the funk trolls, and they explain to them that not only is Poppy's entire understanding of genre and history incorrect, but that the pop trolls have been keeping an incorrect history of how things happened. It's a bit heavy-handed, but I really, truly don't mind that in a children's movie. The funk trolls, who are very blatantly black-coded, explain to Poppy that scrapbooks, which is where the pop trolls learn their history from, are cut, glued, and glittered by the victors. Poppy thinks all the trolls split up and went their separate ways because they just couldn't stop fighting. The funk trolls explained to her, no, your ancestors were some colonizers, babe. Like, that history of funk song they sing to her, that happened. Like, in our world. Not exactly. There were no trolls, but